The next morning, Thomas found himself on an unfamiliar island. It was quiet and very misty. As Thomas explored, he heard strange sounds. Rusty wheels rattled on old rails, and wild whistles echoed all around him.
Where's Misty?
We have to see. Thomas called out, but no one answered. Then, as Thomas rounded a bend, he made an amazing discovery. Thomas had come fender to fender with 3 of the strangest engines he'd ever seen. Cinders and ashes, peeped Thomas. The strange engines' names were Bash, Dash, and Ferdinand. They told Thomas he was on Misty Island.
That's Bash.
Thomas. We're the logging locos, said Dash. We've been watching you since you first rolled onto the island. We played rattling wheels and whistling whistles with you, Bash said, but you didn't play with us. You can now if you want. Thomas did not want to play with Bash, Dash, and Ferdinand. Their games were strange. No, thank you. I have to get back to the island of Sodor. And with that, Thomas whooshed backward down the track. Later, as the mist grew thicker and darkness fell, Thomas wasn't feeling so great. He had chuffed and huffed all day, but he hadn't found a way off Misty Island. Thomas knew he would have to ask the logging locals for help. The next morning on Sodor, Sir Topham had learned that Thomas was missing. Everyone wanted to help find Thomas. The engine searched all over Sodor. Harold took to the air. Sir Topham had, and Captain chugged out to sea. Thomas spent the day looking for the logging locals. Tracks criss and crossed. They climbed into foggy mountains and dove into tangled forests. Then, overlooking a deep valley, Thomas discovered an old logging camp. Foot plates and fenders, Thomas exclaimed. I found the logging locos. Bash, Dash, and Ferdinand were loading wood into the old logging camp. Thomas asked them for help, but they were busy. We said hello to you yesterday, Dash said, but you didn't want to be friends with us. I'm sorry, Thomas peeped. I was silly to think I could find a way off Misty Island by myself. Then Thomas realized something amazing. Bumpers and buffers. These logs are Joby logs.
And house.
That's the wood we need to build the search and rescue center. The logging locals clanked closer together to listen as Thomas told them about the rescue center. They agreed to help him collect logs. Thomas showed the locals how quickly he could shunt flatbeds holding logs. One biff, one bash, and there's never a crash. We can't work this hard, said Dash. We'll run out of oil, said Bash. That's right, added Ferdinand. The logging locos weren't diesels, but they used wood and oil for fuel. I'm sure you have enough oil, Thomas reassured him. Sir Topham Hatt says I make good decisions. The engines busily hauled logs and shunted flatbeds.
Daddy!
But when they came to a rickety old bridge, Thomas stopped. The logging locos liked bouncing on the wibbly-wobbly shake bridge. Yippee! They cheered as they shunted across the biking tracks. Thomas didn't like the bridge, but he knew he had to collect the Joby wood. So wobbly wheel by wobbly wheel, he crept slowly across. Everything shook, but nothing broke. And Thomas was proud of himself for being so bold and brave. Thomas needed to load the heavy logs onto the flatbeds, but old Wheezy, the camp's giant log loader, wasn't much help. He liked throwing logs instead of loading them. He jiggled and juggled and spun. Logs flew here and there. They splashed in a pond and crashed into trees. One even bashed Thomas on the boiler. The locals cackled with laughter. Thomas needed a better way to load the Joby wood. Luckily, he spotted an old machine. That's Hee-Haw, said Dash. He's the old log loading machine. He needs too much oil, Bash added. That's why we don't use him. Thomas wasn't worried. They poured the last of the oil into Hee-Haw. As the old machine creaked and sputtered into action, Thomas was very pleased. Soon Thomas had 3 flat beds full of Joby logs, but he had no idea how to get them back to Sodor. We could use the tunnel, Dad suggested. Thomas was amazed. You didn't tell me there was a tunnel to Sodor, he peeped. That's because it's closed, Dash said. That's because it's dangerous, Dash added. Thomas was too excited to listen. I know all about tunnels. It won't be dangerous.
Thomas and the local nobles gathered the Joby logs and headed towards the tunnel that leads to Sodor.